The pursuit of human freedom is the ultimate, defining struggle of our existence. We live in a world overflowing with societal expectations, cultural conditioning, and digital distractions that quietly conspire to strip us of our sovereign power, trapping us in a comfortable prison of mediocrity. In his fiercely passionate and deeply philosophical call to arms, the Motivation Manifesto, high-performance coach Brendon Burchard presents a radical psychological thesis that demands a total revolution of the self. True motivation is not a random, fleeting emotional spark, but a deliberate, hard-won state of personal liberty that must be aggressively declared and defended every single day. Burchard strips away the soft, coddling language of modern self, help to expose the two greatest enemies of human potential: external social oppression and internal psychological fear. Through a brilliant, commanding synthesis of historical rhetoric and behavioral psychology, the book serves as a precise structural blueprint to help individuals break free from the chains of complacency, reclaim their personal power, and step into a life of uncompromised greatness. To understand why so many highly capable individuals spend their lives drifting through a state of quiet desperation, we must first isolate the core psychological friction Burchard addresses: the tragic trade-off between social acceptance and personal freedom. From the moment we are born, we are bombarded by the explicit and implicit demands of our environment. Our parents, teachers, peers, and employers constantly hand us their curated scripts of who we should be, what goals we should pursue, and how we should behave to remain safe and respectable members of the tribe. The human brain, driven by an ancient, evolutionary terror of social exclusion, instinctively molds itself to these external expectations. We minimize our grandest ambitions, quiet our unique voices, and conform to the standard metrics of societal success out of a desperate desire to fit in and avoid judgment. Burchard forces us to realize that this path is a slow, agonizing form of spiritual suicide. Each time you say yes to a career, a relationship, or a lifestyle that does not align with your deepest authentic desires simply to please someone else, you are actively volunteering to live as a passive passenger in your own life. Personal freedom demands that we possess the courage to practice radical self-reliance, intentionally shattering the expectations of the crowd to chart a path dictated entirely by our own sovereign vision. This declaration of independence requires an unflinching, data-driven confrontation with our greatest internal saboteur, the multi-headed monster of fear. Fear is not a permanent, unchangeable reality. It is nothing more than a sophisticated cognitive illusion, a predictive mental simulation gone completely awry. When we contemplate stepping out of our comfort zones to launch a new channel, write a bold novel, or pivot our entire professional lives, our brains instantly generate terrifying scenarios of worst-case outcomes. We become paralyzed by the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of scarcity, and even the bizarre, hidden fear of our own success. Burchard dismantles this paralysis by revealing that fear survives exclusively on a diet of ambiguity and lack of preparation. When you leave your dreams floating around as vague, unanchored wishes, your mind naturally fills the void with anxiety. To conquer fear, you must subject it to rigorous analytical scrutiny, breaking down your terrifying assumptions into concrete, manageable data points. Ask yourself, what is the absolute worst thing that could happen, and exactly how would I recover from it? By bringing your fears into the light of conscious, deliberate planning, you strip them of their emotional power, transforming a paralyzing psychological ghost into a simple, solvable operational challenge. Once the mind is liberated from the grip of fear, you can begin to activate the first major engine of true motivation, the power of sustained desire. Desire is the raw, combustible fuel of human achievement. the intense emotional energy that allows an individual to endure massive physical discomfort, creative frustration, and social isolation in service of a magnificent goal. The vast majority of regular people complain that they lack motivation, failing to realize that their real problem is that their goals are incredibly boring. They are chasing low-stakes, safe, uninspired objectives that fail to activate their deep evolutionary drive. To unlock an unshakable, self-renewing reservoir of energy, you must cultivate what Burchard terms a magnificent obsession. You must define a vision for your future that is so bold, so impactful, and so intrinsically meaningful to your identity that it literally pulls you out of bed in the morning. This desire cannot be a passive, occasional thought. It must be actively stoked every single day through intense visualization, constant contemplation, and deliberate focus. When your mind is completely saturated with a clear, burning image of what you want to create, the standard temptations of distraction, laziness, and procrastination are instantly burned away by the heat of your purpose. This internal fire must be coupled with a fierce, uncompromising mastery of the second engine of motivation, the rule of absolute focus. We live in a hyper-connected information age that is systematically designed to fracture our attention span, turning us into hyper-reactive dopamine addicts who spend our days responding to other people's priorities. Every notification, every trivial email, and every mindless scroll through a social media feed acts as an invisible, highly expensive drain on our finite cognitive capital. Burchard issues a stark warning to the modern content creator and professional. If you do not consciously protect your focus, the world will happily steal your life from you, 1 minute at a time. True creative mastery requires radical, singular devotion, the ability to close the door, silence the digital noise, and channel the entirety of your intellect into one single high-value objective for extended, uninterrupted blocks of time. You must learn to treat your attention as a sacred, scarce resource, ruthlessly cutting away the secondary projects, trivial obligations, and toxic relationships that serve as background noise in your life. Greatness is never achieved by dipping your toes into a dozen different pools. It is achieved by diving deep into the one ocean that matters to your destiny. This relentless focus must manifest as immediate, massive, and unyielding action, a discipline Burchard calls honoring the urgent stride. The world is filled with brilliant, highly educated dreamers who spend their entire lives endlessly planning, researching, and waiting for a perfect moment of readiness that will never actually arrive. This chronic overanalysis is nothing more than a sophisticated, socially acceptable form of cowardice. The market does not care about your pristine intentions, your unexecuted ideas, or your secret potential. The universe rewards action, and action alone. You must develop a bias for speed, stepping onto the field of play and launching your projects long before you feel fully ready, choosing the messy reality of real-world feedback over the safe, sterile comfort of perfectionism. Every chapter you write, every video you script, and every experiment you run provides you with invaluable, hard data that can never be uncovered through pure thought. By committing yourself to a pace of relentless execution, you build a powerful, self-sustaining momentum that transforms you from a passive consumer of reality into an active creator of the future. To sustain this high-octane momentum over a multi-decade career without succumbing to the devastating trap of burnout, an individual must cultivate the vital trait of emotional resilience, specifically the capacity to practice radical presence and joy. Many high-achieving individuals mistakenly believe that the path to success requires them to live in a state of permanent stress, hyper-vigilance, and agonizing anxiety, viewing misery as the necessary price of admission for wealth or impact. This short-sighted perspective completely misinterprets the true nature of human biology. When you run your engine at maximum capacity, fueled exclusively by the dirty energy of stress, anger, or fear of failure, you secrete floods of toxic hormones that rapidly degrade your health, impair your cognitive flexibility, and destroy your long-term capacity for breakthrough creative insight. True sustainable high performance requires you to consciously bring joy and radical appreciation to the immediate present moment. You must learn to look at the difficult, messy process of building your business, writing your manuscript, or editing your script not as an exhausting obligation, but as an extraordinary, beautiful privilege. When you shift your orientation from heavy duty to joyful mastery, your daily labor ceases to be a drain on your energy and transforms into a deep, self-renewing well of life force. Ultimately, the Motivation Manifesto is a fierce, deeply empowering declaration that places the crown of destiny firmly back onto the head of the individual. It completely strips away the comforting, self-defeating excuses of institutional helplessness, historical victimhood, or external limitations, reminding us that we possess absolute, sovereign control over our internal state of mind. The journey to an extraordinary life of legacy and impact does not require a genetic miracle, a sudden windfall of capital, or the permission of the gatekeepers. It simply requires you to look at your daily choices with absolute, unflinching honesty, to grant yourself the permission to be great, and to defend your focus with your life. By choosing desire over fear, automation over willpower, and relentless action over safe procrastination, you break the chains of mediocrity forever. The next time you find yourself standing at a crossroads, tempted to shrink back into the comfortable safety of the crowd, pause, remember your own potential, declare your personal freedom, and build the life you were actually born to live.